passing of Jesse Jackson Sr. marks the end of an era in American civil rights history, but not the end of his influence. A protege of Martin Luther King Jr., Jackson carried the torch of economic justice. He carried a torch of political inclusion and racial equality long after the civil rights movement's most visible leaders were gone. Through the Rainbow Push Coalition and two historic presidential runs in the 1980s, he reshaped what political participation looked like for marginalized communities. His voice reverberated far beyond the United States, advocating for human rights, negotiating the release of hostage abroad, and amplifying the call for justice wherever systemic inequality persisted. For many, his passing is not just a community loss, but a global moment of reflection. And as tribute pour in and ceremonies unfold, another story unfolds across the Pacific in South Korea, one that raises fundamental questions about democracy and dissent. Now, when a former president stands trial for insurrection over a martial law declaration, what does that mean for a nation that once praised as a democratic beacon in Asia? Is this accountability at work or a government suppressing opposition? Is the state defending order or silencing underdog forces it deems destabilizing? Well, these are the topics shaping today's global headlines. Welcome to the Flash News. I'm Star Smart. Let's begin. The White House hosted a ceremony commemorating the 100th observance of Black History Month, a centennial milestone for this annual national recognition. We see the event brought together public officials, invited guests, and community representatives to reflect on contributions and achievements in American history.
United States, Donald J. Trump.
This is a nice full room. You know, we have a ballroom being built right now. So in about a year and a half, we'll be able to have about, I'd say, 10 times the number. Invite some friends that couldn't make it today because, frankly, this was a sold-out crowd. Has been ever since I've been president. Every year it's been sold out. So a lot of great friends. Here's your knockout panel, okay? For those that are interested, see that curtain? You open that curtain, and it's a beautiful funnel right into the most beautiful ballroom. It's being built right now. So it's pretty, and they've wanted it for 150 years. We're getting it done a lot. We're getting a lot of other things done, too. Well, I want to thank you all and welcome you to the White House on this very special occasion. It is indeed. I've been at every one of them, and we celebrate the 100th anniversary of Black History Month. That's a big deal.
President Donald Trump delivered remarks at the ceremony, noting the significance of the occasion, and in the course of his address, he paid tribute to Jesse Jackson Sr., acknowledging Jackson's long-standing role in American public life. Let's take a listen.
I want to begin by expressing our sadness at the passing of a person who I knew very well. Jesse was a piece of work, I want to tell you. He was a piece of work, but he was a good man. He was a real hero, and I just want to pay my highest respects to Reverend Jesse Jackson. He's a good man. He was actually, as you got to know him, he got better and better all the time. A lot of people, you get to know him, they get worse and worse. Jesse got better and better. But I knew him well long before becoming president, and he really was special with lots of personality, grit, and street smarts. You would say Jesse had serious street smarts, right? A very important ingredient to life, I will tell you. He was gregarious and someone who truly loved people and a force of nature. He was somebody that we're going to greatly miss. And on behalf of everyone here today, I know you join me in sending our condolences to the entire family. Had a great family.
Well, that video of President Donald Trump, his opening remarks from the event, has been widely shared. The gathering emphasized historical reflection and national observance, with attendees recognizing achievements and contributions across multiple fields. We see more into Jesse Jackson's memorial. The civil rights icon Jesse Jackson Sr., who died on Tuesday, February 17, 2026, at the age of 84, peacefully at his home in Chicago, surrounded by family, his loved ones announced. He had been living with a rare neurological condition known as progressive supranuclear palsy, the PSP, a disorder he had battled in recent years after an earlier diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. In the wake of his passing, a separate memorial gathering was held to honor his life and legacy. This event was anchored by Alex Sims Jones, CEO of APS and Associates, and brought together supporters, colleagues, community leaders, and members of the public who came to show their support and pay their respects.
Reverend Jackson's legacy reshaped the moral and political landscape of our city. So today, you will hear from his greatest gifts, his children, Jesse Jr., Jonathan, Santita, Yusuf, who will all talk about the celebration of his life. So thank you all for coming. We're going to start with prayer. Bishop Meeks is going to start us with that prayer. Thank you.
As you saw, the ceremony opened with prayer by Bishop Meeks, set in a solemn and reverent tone for the gathering. Members of Jackson's family, his children, delivered heartfelt tributes, sharing personal reflections on his life, his decades of activism, and the values he championed both at home and on the national stage. Well, attendees spoke of Jackson not just as a public leader, but as a devoted father and mentor whose life work spanned civil rights, civic engagement, and grassroots advocacy. Let's take a listen.
My first thank you is to the Reverend Jesse L. Jackson Sr., my father, our dad. We call him leadership. We call him Reverend. He has set such an example for us and our city.
There is no one who's been more faithful to the mission of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King than Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson Sr. With God. I can see Dr. King welcoming him in and saying, son, I told you were going to do it. I can see Reverend Bevel.
For 60 years of being able to have both parents, thank God that he is now resting in the arms of a very beneficent and loving God. And I thank God for all of you that have prayed for my father.
Thank you so much for your prayers. It's been obviously a challenge, but I think we all feel the magnitude of this loss, but also the magnitude of a life well lived. And it's such an honor to be standing up here with my siblings and just thank all of you deeply from the bottom of our hearts for
To cover the full spectrum of what it means to be an American.
The atmosphere was one of remembrance and gratitude as people honored the profound impact that he had on countless lives. In statements following his death, his family described him as a servant leader whose commitment helped shape movements for justice and human dignity across the globe. Memorial services, including a public lying in repose and a final celebration of life in Chicago, were scheduled for the days following the ceremony to allow the public to pay their respect. Now, away from the United States and on to Europe, we see in a dramatic development which within the Britain royal family, we see Prince Andrew, formerly known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, has reportedly been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. The arrest marks one of the most serious legal escalations involving a senior royal in the modern British history. Well, the BBC reports that authorities are investigating alleged misconduct confirmed, though full details of the accusations remain under official review. Now, in response, King Charles III stated that the law must take its course, signaling a public commitment to legal due process over royal protection. The monarchy, which has faced reputational strain in recent years, now confronts renewed scrutiny. The broader implication is significant. In a constitutional monarchy where the royal family plays a symbolic role, legal accountability reinforces the principle that no individual stands above the law. The case may also influence public trust in the monarchy at a time when it's relevant in increasing debate. Now, Washington has warned Tehran as tensions escalate is in the news as well. The White House has warned that Iran would be wise to reach an agreement with the United States as President Donald Trump again hinted at possible military actions. We hear this stated again with Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
Reasons and arguments that one could make for a strike against Iran. The president had a very successful operation as commander-in-chief with Operation Midnight Hammer, as you know, as you just said, totally obliterated Iran's nuclear facilities. The president has always been very clear, though, with respect to Iran or any country around the world, diplomacy is always his first option, and Iran would be very wise to make a deal with President Trump and with this administration.
Direct negotiations between Washington and Tehran recently resumed, mediated by Oman, reflecting an effort to de-escalate tensions. However, the diplomatic track runs parallel to mounting pressure, as President Donald Trump has repeatedly threatened military action, initially in response to Iran's crackdown on protesters and more recently over concerns tied to its nuclear program. Now, in a post on Truth Social, President Donald Trump suggested the possibility of a strike, as reports indicate a U.S. military buildup in parts of the Middle East. The dual approach, diplomacy backed by force, echoes previous American strategies in dealing with Tehran. The stakes are regional and global. Any military confrontation could disrupt energy markets, destabilize already fragile Middle Eastern security dynamics, and draw in allied and rival powers alike. At the same time, renewed talks mediated by Oman highlights the persistent diplomatic channel that has historically helped prevent direct conflict. And on the final reports on the Flash News today, we see a South Korean court has sentenced former President Yoon Yeol to life in prison after finding him guilty of leading an insurrection tied to his 2024 martial law declaration.
It was deemed legally sufficient to conclude that the intent was to send troops to the National Assembly, block the chamber, and impair its functions for a prolonged period.
Well, in December 2024, Yoon abruptly declared martial law in a televised address, claiming the need to root out what he described as anti-state forces within the National Assembly. Though the measure lasted only 6 hours before being reversed, it triggered national panic and international concern. South Korea has long been regarded as a democratic success story in Asia, a nation that transitioned from military dictatorship to vibrant democratic governance. The martial law episode shook that reputation. Now, with a life sentence handed down, the legal system appears to be asserting civilian supremacy and constitutional order. Yet the political interpretation remains divided. Supporters argue that the judiciary is defending democracy by holding a former leader accountable. Critics question whether political polarization has influenced the prosecution. The broader implication is profound. South Korea's institutions are being tested under global scrutiny. Whether this moment strengthens democratic resilience or deepens partisan fractures, it may define the country's political trajectory for years to come. And with that, we've come to the end of today's Flash News. Until next time, do stay tuned for Undaunted coming at the top of the hour, 8 p.m. tonight. Thank you for watching.